Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. Last time we got our supply drop module down to the moon, and it occurs to me that this mission is going to need a couple more things to get it ready before we can actually put a crew down. And I figured since I don't quite have Kerbal Attachment System or Kerbal Inventory System working correctly, it would be nice to have something that we can easily move around that has those hose clamp port thingies on it to make sure that we can connect the supply module to the station itself and get all that very necessary life support things transferred over. And so the best approach I can think of was a very small rover, and this will also serve double duty in case the crude pod lands a bit far off from the station itself. It will have this autonomous core on it and its own power source so that it can drive itself to wherever the landing site is, pick up at least 2 of the crew and ferry them back to the station, or at least to the supply pod, and get some things over there figured out, and maybe come back, pick up the 3rd, and then go from there. So I started building out a very small, very simple rover. We're trying to keep it relatively light, but still include on it all of the necessary things, like 2 of these connection port doohickeys that we're going to need at least 2 of to act as a bypass. Maybe we should mount them a little higher so that the hoses can clear the tires. That'd be a good idea, right? And of course, thrusters, because if you flip this thing over on the moon, it's not going to take a whole lot to get it upright again, but they do absolutely help, especially if you blow a tire. You can kind of honey badger the thing across the surface under thruster power, which is super nice because we don't really have the room to bring an engineer on this flight, or someone who can patch tires. So let's get this initial variant out on the runway and do a little bit of a test run. Just wait for everything to load, and of course it's sunk into the pavement. Oh good. All 4 wheels seem to, well, I spoke too soon. 1 wheel for some reason is not operational. We do have plenty of electric charge. It just, I think it tends to think that there's something blocking the wheel or something interfering with it. So that's always super frustrating, although I've had this problem before in my many attempts to build a rover. But yeah, it doesn't look like anything's actually blocking it, but no steering, no throttle or braking response from it. So back to the SPH, and let's see if we can't iron out a little bit of this. So we'll just space the wheels out a little bit more, give them some more room to breathe, and hopefully it won't think that there's a problem here. So yeah, that looks much better. Although the wheelbase is a little off, so we'll just swap a copy of the front wheels onto the back. There we go. That there, we'll tuck those in a little bit. That looks much, much better. And we'll add some brake lights. Make sure they're red and set to the brake key. That'll give us a clear indicator that the brakes are in fact engaged. So let's take it outside and run a little simulation. Make sure our changes to the tires are in fact working. Yep, there's physics load, and so far so good. All 4 wheels actually working. Fantastic. Still no decent wheel physics. The brake lights work. The headlights work. Traction's not really a thing. So we're just gonna not worry about that and get it back into the hangar, and just a few other small things that we have to test. Doesn't look all that bad. Alright, so we'll get a little decoupler back here. We need to make sure a crew can get in and out of this thing, so we need to put a crew pod behind it, put 2 crew members. We'll just up our simulation time to 5 minutes, just in case I really screwed this up. So, back out on the runway for another quick test. Alright. And, I think it's Bob and Alice. I'm not 100%, but it does look like they can board their command seats very easily. Fantastic. So we'll decouple and just take a quick trip down the runway. And coming now out of time warp, and a quick turn. Yeah. Well, even if it was just a simulation, it looks like we've got 2 very tough astronauts here. A little bewildered, but and completely lacking for a smile. Good job. Now we need to worry about getting it out to the moon. So with that in mind, we'll take a quick trip over to the VAB, and we'll start with the same pod that we used to drop supplies next to our research center on the moon last time, and instead remove the supply portion. We don't need the weight, and they don't need the supplies, so we need to just figure out a nifty way to attach this rover. Yeah, I mean, that'll almost work. The big problem is how to have it decouple and not flip over on its back, because that would right away be about the worst thing ever. So I think we need to extend this up just a bit, and we really don't need 4 of them. So we'll try something like this. Yeah. Alright, that's not bad. And now just how to make sure that it doesn't go sliding down onto its back. Well, we're going to use these steel plate things and kind of give it ramps to roll backwards off of, hopefully. We'll have to see how well these work. It's about the only interesting idea I think I had for the whole thing. But really, we just need to make sure that we can kick the back end of the rover out. So we probably need to have those... the bottom section of the ramp tilted out a little bit more just to make sure. So we also don't need a million of them, really just these 2. I do only plan on bringing a single rover, not 2. That's just, I don't know. I'd like to try to keep some kind of symmetry. It'll make trying to balance out that center of mass a little bit easier, but that looks, I mean, not too terrible. I think it'll work. Yeah, we'll try it with just the 1. Make the simulation that we're going to run cost a little bit less. We only need a couple of minutes to test it out, so let's see if it offloads itself in an appropriate manner. Alright, decouple, and it rolls clean away off the edge and explodes. But hey, it rolled clean off and it stayed on its wheels. That's what matters. So that is a successful means of offloading this thing. We just need to balance it all out. And guess what I got working in between last episode or last film segment and this one, because the game crashed a few times in between. Also, the primary purpose of this is to provide power for the Moon Lab when it is those like 30 days or so when it does not have daylight. So a massive cluster of RTGs is about the best solution that I have currently. But also, I got Kerbal Inventory System to work. Required some updating and some shuffling of things around, and, well, it was unpleasant, but it works. Finally, I was wondering where all the parts were this entire time that I did not have access to them. So we can bring crates of stuff for our Kerbals to make this whole thing work. And a big part of that means that they can use those concrete pylons to set up nodes in between the supply module and the station, which will make the construction of these interconnecting pipes a whole lot easier. And a bottle of RCS fuel. That's, I mean, interesting, I guess. I guess I'll have to figure out how to use it, but alright, this creates a little full. There we go. Let's head on over to the other one. Now, this does create a kind of a big problem as far as getting the balance and everything like that to work, and as far as everything that we put in these containers, we do have to kind of deal with the weight of such, and yeah. So I figured, why not just bring a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll just see how much this affects our weight balance, and the truth is, a whole lot. I mean, this might not look like it's offset horribly, but with such high thrust, that is enough to really screw some things up. So we're probably going to have to lighten these crates or decide what it is that we are not going to build. And, well, definitely stronger thrusters are going to be a thing, and more of them. So while I'm sitting here moving this view around and trying to sort some other things out, I'll tell you that I did a lot of testing with this thing off camera, including a simulated test flight that turned out absolutely horribly. As this film segment ends, I do not quite yet have it figured out, but I did eventually sort it. It took some lead ballast and some really skimming down of the crate things and some shuffling around of a few other things, but we did in fact get this silly thing balanced out, even though I don't have these crates on here correctly. So I will be removing them and then putting them back on at least 4 more times before I get this whole thing sorted out. But this is the general look of our next mission to the moon, to get this positioned hopefully properly and in position and waiting on a crew to come start assembling things and getting their research on the moon figured out. So we're going to send this up probably on another DN2A, which is the same rocket we used to deploy the last supply pod. It just worked so gosh darn well. I will, however, completely not forget to pressurize this bottom tank again. Yeah, just like that. See? It's pressurized. It should work this time. So anyway, that's what we have to look forward to. The build time on this is really not going to be that long. I think it's right around 60 days once we get the lifter attached underneath it. So this will probably be our next launch before we have to resupply the space station again and bring them hopefully some new sciencey, experimenty things to do. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it, and I will see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.